Lakeland Currents, your public affairs program for North Central Minnesota. Production funding for Lakeland Currents is made possible by Bemidji Regional Airport, serving the region with daily flights to Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport. More information available at bemidjiairport.org. Closed captioning for Lakeland Currents is sponsored by Nisswa Tax Service, tax preparation for businesses and individuals. Online at nisswatax.com.
Hello again. I'm Jason Edens, your host of Lakeland Currents. Thanks for joining the conversation, and thanks for your ongoing support of Lakeland Public TV. Friends, COVID-19 has affected or impacted every sector of the economy, and the small business community is certainly no exception. So what is the speed of commerce during COVID? What's an appropriate balance between healthcare concerns and economic concerns? Well, who has their finger on the pulse of the business community? The Chamber of Commerce. And here with me today to help us wrestle with these questions and help us understand the state of the business community today in our region are my two guests. Matt Killian is the president of the Brainerd Chamber of Commerce, and Ginny Knutson is the chair of the board of directors of the Brainerd Chamber of Commerce. Matt and Ginny, welcome to the program, and thank you so much for making time today.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Jay. Always a pleasure talking with you.
Well, it's good to see you. And Matt, I want to start with you. I'm sure that most of our viewers are in fact familiar with the Chamber, but I was wondering if you could just give us a brief refresher with kind of an emphasis on what you do on a daily basis.
Yeah, and thanks for the opportunity. You know, the Brainerd Lakes Chamber has a rich history in the area. It's actually over 100 years old. And believe it or not, for a small community this size, our chamber is the 5th largest in the state by total membership. So I think it just speaks to how our community really rallies behind its organizations, its civic organizations. And, you know, our chamber does everything from business connections and marketing to tourism promotion on a regional level, all the way to workforce development and government affairs. So we're very much a full service organization, and we're proud to serve the Lakes area.
I wasn't aware of the fact that it was 100 years old, nor was I aware of the fact that it's the 5th largest in the state. Now, is that based on membership?
It's based on membership. And when you look at the communities that are larger than us, as far as the size of their chambers, you look at communities like Minneapolis and St. Paul and Duluth and Mankato, and then there's Brainerd. And so we have a louder voice and more influence because the small business community gets behind this organization.
Ginny, I have a question for you. Is the Chamber a partisan organization?
Not at all. We are definitely a nonpartisan organization. We like to hear all voices. Early in my membership of the board, Matt brought forward something that the Federation, the U.S. Chamber Federation, put together and talked about us being the sane center. So as a chamber, we really try to be a voice for business. And we understand that businesses come from all parts of the political spectrum. So we are here to give information, to be advocates, to help our members become basically the businesses that support our community. That's what the chamber is. The chamber's mission is to support the businesses that support our community. And we want to support all parts of our community.
And yet the Chamber, it's my understanding, is organized as a 501c6, and you do advocate for specific policies. So I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about the policy priorities of the Chamber, both locally and perhaps at the state level or even nationally.
Well, go ahead, Matt.
We're both jumping in because we're so excited about this issue. But, you know, the Chamber, when you talk about lobbying, right? When people talk about lobbying, that has a negative connotation because we associate it with partisan politics, and we associate it with a lot of the bigger organizations in our country that have a loud voice when it comes to political influence. But here at the local level and at the state level, our lobbying efforts really consist of the chamber educating our lawmakers about the role of businesses and how political decisions at all levels might impact not only the business community, but our entire economy. And so what I like to think that we do is educate more than persuade. If you think about people that run for public office, they might have expertise in one area, but they may not have expertise in another. A lot of our political leaders don't have a business background. So what we try to do with our advocacy is really illuminate how different policy positions might impact Main Street and especially small businesses in our neck of the woods.
Are there any specific policies that you advocate for locally? I mean, what does that advocacy look like in our region? I was wondering if either one of you could give us an example of policies that the chamber stands behind.
Probably the biggest one that we've been working on the past several months is, of course, COVID is tops on people's minds. So I'm very proud that the Chamber has partnered with Crow Wing County to develop the Lakes Country Cares program, which has been to advocate for reopening the Lakes Country, but in a safe way, and to really get information out to businesses on how you can open safely. As Tim Poole, the county administrator, put it, there's about 20 to 30% of customers who are concerned, very, very concerned, and maybe even higher about COVID. Do we want to turn away those customers? No, we don't. We want to bring all of our customers in. And especially with Lakes Country and the Brainerd Lakes area, the summer season, we all know, is very important to us. And so we time that advocacy, that promotion with our summer season, so that people from other parts of Minnesota, the Twin Cities outside of Minnesota, would feel comfortable coming to the Lakes area. We hope that continues through the fall, as certainly things change from day to day with COVID.
So there's obviously no doubt about the impact that you all have on our business community. Your work is incredibly important, but Matt, who pays for it? Who's paying for your time right now?
Yeah, that's a great question. And we don't always think about it that way. So I appreciate the question. So the Chamber has a diverse revenue stream. About 40% of our budget comes from membership dues. So that's all of the 1,000 plus members. Based on employee counts, they pay us on an annual basis a certain membership fee. It ranges from about $300 a year all the way to about $2,500 a year, depending on the size of the business or organization. And beyond that, what we have is just a variety of different programs and sponsorship opportunities, much like any other nonprofit would have. But our model is very transactional. So you're paying to come to a business training, you're paying to come to an event, you're paying to advertise in a visitor guide. And that whole big basket of other revenue streams, including such things as apparel sales, Brainerd Lakes apparel sales at the Welcome Center south of town, that represents about 60% of our budget. But we're living in a time where you have to follow the money to understand the influence. And I'm proud to say that there's not external dollars flowing into the chamber to try to harness our political influence, so to speak.
Well, I appreciate that transparency and candor. You mentioned nonprofits, and I was going to ask you about that. Of course, you've had the opportunity to work in the nonprofit sector for quite some time for some substantial nonprofits in our region. I'm curious, what's the perception or the position of the chamber on the nonprofit community's contribution to our economy?
Another great question. That's why I'm glad I'm on this show, Jason. I worked for the Initiative Foundation for 16 years, where I had a chance to get to know you, and I worked in both fundraising, marketing, and leadership development. And nonprofit organizations, as far as their representation within the chamber, they're about between 10 and 15% of our membership. So we have a robust nonprofit community within the Brainerd Lakes area and really all over Minnesota. But they do so much more than just provide safety net services. And that's an incredible service to the community, to have those kind of human service, social service needs being met. But they're really community connectors. They're the social capital in the community that brings people together, that channels generosity, and that solves problems. And we're always happy to partner and listen to those nonprofit voices.
Well, obviously, we need to spend some time talking about commerce during COVID. So I want to start with an announcement from the U.S. Chamber that was released earlier this week. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce announced the Save Small Business Resource Center, which is essentially, as described by the Chamber, an online survival kit for small businesses. That sounds dire. Ginny, I'm interested if the chamber has any additional information about this.
Oh, that's a new program, and Matt might be more aware of it than I am, but I can tell you that our chamber is well ahead of the curve since, as I explained, our Lake Country Cares program, we've been promoting that for months now. And I think that's one fantastic thing about our chamber, and Matt and his staff are really on the cutting edge in a lot of ways in the different programs that we do put forward to support our local business community. We're going to continue to promote Lake Country Cares. We've got promotions certainly for Small Business Saturday, which is coming up right after Black Friday, right after Thanksgiving, to really give small businesses in our community the ability to thrive in this very different environment. We all know that things have moved online, and hope that our small businesses can survive in that environment. So we are doing things such as having a wrap in the Brainerd Daily Dispatch, an advertising wrap that allows small businesses to compete with those big flyers that the big stores and big boxes put out. We also, I have my office, my law office is in downtown Brainerd. I'm so proud of all of the work that the chamber has done to promote downtown Brainerd and really bring it back to life. You can really see it developing. So those are some of the things that we have done, and I'm sure we will continue to do, and just demonstrating how really our chamber is on the cutting edge.
That's really interesting. So the Lake Country Cares initiative was something that was started by the Brainerd Chamber of Commerce without any persuasion or needling from the U.S. Chamber or the state chamber.
No, and truly it was a partnership. So I want to give full credit to Crow Wing County for being a part of that as well too.
Mm-hmm. Can you tell us a little bit more about how the Lake Country Cares performs? In other words, if I'm a small business owner, how do I take advantage of the services that this provides?
And I can jump in there. There is really two different campaigns that overlapped, and the overlapping was by design. The first one that we launched in April of last year was Reopen Brainerd Lakes. And Reopen Brainerd Lakes is exactly what it sounds like. It was, at that point, it was a dire situation. Businesses were hanging by a thread, and we weren't at that point in time getting the ability to put safety precautions in place so that small businesses, could reopen their doors. And our mantra the whole time was safe reopening. And I think what gives that a lot of credibility is at the same time, or shortly thereafter, we launched, like Ginny mentioned, the Lake Country Cares campaign. And that was a public safety campaign. Crow Wing County was a huge partner in that. All the area chambers were partners in that. And I think the best part of it is that it was endorsed independently by the 3 healthcare organizations in the Brainerd Lakes area. So what that is it gives an opportunity for businesses to get educated about COVID preparedness plans, to actually publish those plans on a website for public view, and then also to get marketing materials and awareness materials like posters, masks, templates, a variety of other things that they could use to make sure that their customers felt safe. And more broadly, Jason, that the Brainerd Lakes area felt safe for visitors. So we're proud of that. We're also proud of the Reopen Brainerd Lakes campaign because that, I again, showed a lot of integrity when we're marching the two efforts kind of down the track at the same time.
Well, I want to follow up on that. And I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about some of the impacts that you're actually seeing within the business community. If anyone would know what's taking place on the ground in terms of COVID and its impacts, it would certainly be the chamber. So is there anything that you can share with us in terms of how businesses are adapting or new challenges that they're facing today with the rising caseload?
Yeah, and I'll start it off, Ginny, and then turn it over to you for some color commentary, if you don't mind. I don't want to take over the host role of the show here, Jay, but the one thing that I would try to do is bring people back, not in October, but in April and May. And so in April and May, what we were seeing was that Crow Wing County was one of the top 5 counties in the state of Minnesota for non-essential businesses, which means those are the businesses that were closed the longest. In addition to that, we were one of the top 5 counties in the state for unemployment claims. And more than 1 out of 4 workers within Crow Wing County was filing for unemployment insurance. So the situation at that time, sometimes it's when you look back at it, you tend to think that we kind of knew everything that was going to happen, and we didn't. Mm-hmm. At that point, the summer tourism season was in jeopardy. A lot of the business relief packages were still in formation. No one knew if the funding was going to be available. The business dried up for a lot of these companies. And if you remember back then, we even got to the point where we lost Memorial Day weekend, both in substance and in actuality, because people weren't coming up for that weekend. And the first time that we really got a chance to reopen was June 10th. So through all that time, I would say maybe 2/3 of the businesses received some form of relief funding, be it the payroll protection program, paycheck protection program, SBA loans, grants. So that certainly helped. The biggest thing that helped, though, is the kind of the resurrection of the summer tourism season for family vacations that was beyond all expectations. And so that really helped buoy the area and the tourism businesses, but all businesses in the area, because we're all connected. And then past that into September, we had an extension of the summer tourism season, because the virtual learning and combined with remote work meant more families could spend more time up here. So right now, I think that we are in a better than expected position. But now that the tourism season has essentially ended and ended pretty abruptly with the snowfall, now we're facing the prospect of a long, cold winter. And it still remains to be seen if our local businesses can survive with local customers.
So as the newly elected board chair, my next question is for you, Jenny. I'm wondering, just from a big picture, if we can zoom out for a moment, and from a big picture perspective, how do we strike a balance between our economic needs and our public health care needs as well, going forward?
Well, fortunately, I'm not running for president, because I really don't have the answer to that question. We have to keep trying to do that balance, because again, you push on one side of the seesaw, then the other one goes up, and there's going to be pluses and minuses. I think we definitely need to keep all voices at the table so that people can be heard. But we do have to balance. I think it's not to get too, with my own personal opinion, too much, but we need each other. Human beings need that human connection. The chamber has been a great way for business people to keep continuing to have that connection. I also happen to serve on the Essentia local health board for St. Joseph's, and I know it impacts our healthcare system dramatically. So we do have to protect our vulnerable communities, but we also have to recognize that people need to live, they need to survive and have jobs and have that human connection. I just want to add a little bit to how our chamber seems to be really, I think, taking a good balance. We are recognizing the need for human connection in having events, but we've had to scale back. We've had to retool. We've had to make sure we've got safety precautions in place. But I think one thing, I mean, Matt's hit it, Brainerd has been surviving very well because of our outdoor amenities. And it's showing up also in our chamber membership. We continue to add more and more people to our chamber. People see the value. I'm also seeing that there's just going to be a lot more remote work. And I think Brainerd is and this whole Lakes area is poised for that. And fortunately, we've got great infrastructure around that. And I think it's only going to continue to build. So we just have to keep talking with each other and recognizing that people have concerns on both sides. It's going to affect all of us at some point in time, and we just have to be compassionate and listen to each other.
So I really appreciate the work that you both did with your Reopen Brainerd campaign earlier this year. What's happened in Europe is sometimes harbinger of what could happen here in the United States. And of course, with the caseload rising, are you prepared for, or are you beginning to game scenarios for a shutdown 2.0?
Yeah, another good question. I actually have a former exchange student from France, and I was just talking with him last night, and this was the last night before a pretty major shutdown in France and other countries in Europe. You know, it's unpredictable, as you know, what might happen. You know, when people talk about the new normal, really the new normal is change and uncertainty. And it's the ability to pivot and adapt on a dime very quickly. You know, if you think about going back again a few months, you think about restaurants. Restaurants initially were shut down. After they were shut down, they could do curbside pickup and delivery. Then they could have patios, and then they could have 50% capacity with 4 or 6 people at a table, and then recently 10 people. And most of that all happened within a 30-day period. So they had to very quickly pivot in order to survive. And the way that I feel about it is within our community, and I can say this because I've seen our community in action. We should never depend on external forces to come in and save us, be it government relief funding or you know, tourism or anything really. We need to invest in ourselves, and that's really what it comes down to for the chamber is persuading the community that it pays to buy local and support everything local, businesses, nonprofits, and civic organizations. But beyond that, that they can make a difference doing it. When people think about, well, what is my $50 going to do at this business or $100 at that one? Well, not much, but when we do it all together, that's where the power is. And so what I'm going to be relying on as the chamber president and our 1,000 businesses and the influence and the voice that we have is, should those scenarios present themselves again, we need to rally our own forces for good and take care of our neighbors. So do we have scenarios? We certainly have talked about certain ones, but I don't have the plan behind the glass that we can break in case of emergency at this point.
Sure. Well said with regard to uncertainty. Well, unfortunately, we only have a couple more minutes here, and I still have several questions for you. I'm curious, how has COVID affected your recruitment at the chamber? Perhaps you can answer this question, Ginny. What message do you have for businesses that haven't yet joined? How would you compel them to join under these circumstances?
Sure. Have a voice. Our chamber is about having a voice and making connections. That's what our chamber is about. It's about meeting other people. That's why our law firm had been a part of the chamber in years past. And so a few years ago, I thought, you know what, it's time for me to rejoin, meet some other, just get out and meet more business people in the community. And it's been a fantastic, I can't say enough about the chamber. Obviously, I'm the board chair now, but it really does allow you to meet people, to meet other business people, see where they're at and how you can help them. Just like Matt was saying, we need to help each other. We can't wait for some outside force to save us. So that is the great role of the chamber, not to mention all of the training opportunities that the chamber provides, all the information that the chamber provides. So I think, you know, for a small amount compared to all of the other marketing or advertising dollars that you could spend as a business, your chamber membership dollars, you're going to make more connections and generate more business opportunities with your chamber membership than any other way.
So another question for you is, how do your fellow board members, I understand you have 16 board members, yourself included, how do your fellow board members advance your mission?
The great thing is our board is comprised of people from every different industry, from all around the lakes area, from Cross Lake, Pequot, and all around the Brainerd-Baxter area. So Matt calls upon our expertise in our different areas all the time so that he can make sure that the message of the chamber reaches all sectors within our region so that we can meet the needs of everybody. And then, yes, we go out and we recruit other people who we think might be good ambassadors and have good resources for the chamber.
Matt, is the Brainerd Chamber of Commerce autonomous from the state chamber or the U.S. chamber, or do you have to walk lockstep with the U.S. chamber?
We are completely independent. We just share the chamber name, but there is no franchising of chambers, so to speak. So we certainly stay in close connection, especially with the state chamber. We develop actually policy positions through our chamber federation of about 50 chambers in the state. I stay connected with the U.S. chamber, but they certainly are engaged in activities that are beyond the scope of what our chamber does. However, just like people need to be connected in order to be stronger, so do chambers and so do businesses. And so we do that.
Well, we only have time for one more question for each one of you. And I'm curious why the two of you are drawn to this work at the chamber. So Matt, I know you started your education at Michigan Tech as an engineering student, but I'm just curious, can you tell me a little bit about yourself and why it is that you're interested in working on behalf of the business community?
Yeah, I always think when I was at Michigan Tech, when I found out that engineering didn't involve driving trains, I promptly left and found myself with my way to Minnesota. But for me, it's a chance within the chamber to be entrepreneurial personally and to make a difference through holding up small business in the private marketplace. I love the fact that we're able to bring people together to solve problems. I love the fact that we're able to strengthen these small businesses that have this American dream of being successful. And just the diversity work and the meaning in the work and the results that we're able to achieve being relatively small within the community and the state, I think is amazing. And that's because our businesses are engaged and this organization is open-minded and dynamic enough and bold enough to take the steps to move our community forward.
So Ginny, as you mentioned, you're a partner at BSKK Law, and I know you're involved with Zonta International as well. What brings you to this work?
Well, Jason, I immigrated to Brainerd when I was 1 year old, but I grew up in Brainerd, and so I'm a Brainerd girl. I love Brainerd. Brainerd is the best place to be, I think, in the whole wide world. Love to travel, but this is the best place to be. And as a lawyer who works with business people, small businesses on day-to-day basis, I'm part of their support system, and I saw the chamber as another great part of a support system for small businesses. And I can't say enough about how our chamber really does support small, medium, and large businesses within our community, and to show that Brainerd is a great place to do business, to raise your family, and to be a part of an amazing connected community.
Well, I want to thank both of you for the work that you do on behalf of our business community. And of course, I want to thank you very much for your time today. I really appreciate it. I've learned a great deal.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure. Thanks.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. And I want to thank all of you for joining us once again. I'm Jason Edens, your host of Lakeland Currents. Be kind, be well. We'll see you next week.